Hello everyone, good morning. Nice and early and bright and shiny. My name is Lisa Lang, I'm the Director of EU Policy Affairs from EIT Climate-KIC. We just happen to be the biggest innovation agency on a European level for the fight against climate change. Happy partner with UNFCCC, and we are here to make history because welcome to a first. Actually of a triple first, because we have 3 sessions presenting to you for a complete new topic. It's called Culture Creative Industries. Let me tell you a little story what actually happened in the last couple of years, especially on EU level. Culture Creative Industries is acknowledged as an EU ecosystem industry. That means culture and creatives are to be considered in any of the programs on EU level. That also means for culture creative people, you have a seat on the table. And then at Climate-KIC, we decided that we need catalysts. Because let's be real here, is we are here at COP, and there's something which we all have in common, is like our concern that we are not going to be fast enough on the track to net zero. And quite frankly, we need more than net zero. In order to do so, we need catalysts. We need a new force to join us in the fight against climate change. So this is why we decided that it's about time that we bring people together and start a conversation in the context of digital arts, sustainable web, fashion. Fashion being one of the most polluting industries in the world, 30 to 40% overproduction. It's about time that things change. And in order to do so, we bring people together and start talking, and not talking only, but also talking actions and what we can do together. So it's my absolute pleasure to have a bunch of fantastic people who usually haven't met in a room like this before, but there is always a first. And I'm very glad that we at Climate-KIC, together with UNFCCC and the Innovation Hub, and I want to say thank you to the fantastic team who made all of this happening. Also hello to the internet, because we're live streaming this. You are all a part of this. Share this. The hashtag is Systems Change Now, and UGIH, Innovation Creative Industries. So, welcome for the next 3 hours. It's going to be a ride, hopefully very inspirational, and hopefully very inspirational to innovate for real. We will start with a wonderful panel with the one and only Muchaneta and Napel. Welcome. I hereby hand over the torch to you. Please enlighten us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That's an introduction. As she said, my name is Muchaneta Napel, and I am the moderator of this really exciting panel today. For my benefit, I'm on first name basis with these wonderful people, so I would love to introduce Fredrik, Luca, and Laura. We're going to start off first by allowing them to kind of talk about who they are and what they do. So Fredrik, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you, Muchaneta, and thank you so much. We were so happy to be here. My name is Fredrik Timour, and I'm running something called Fashion Innovation Center. And I've been working with digitalization of the fashion industry for the last, I would say, 15 years. And when I started, it was very undigitized, and it's still quite undigitized, the industry. So I started out with creating a company where we created microelectronics. That's for clothes, actually, 10 years ago. That was way too early, of course. Then I worked with a couple of fashion councils around in Europe, and now we're running the Fashion Innovation Center. And we're basically a hub, an innovation hub, outside of the industry, where we can help the industry develop electronics and platforms to go on. So Luca.
Luca Bertolino. I represent FILA here. FILA is a quite well-known brand in the sportswear industry. It's a company that was founded back in 1911 in Italy. About 50 years ago, it entered the sportswear business. About 2 years ago, we entered the sustainability challenge, so we're quite new to the topic. We've been in the business of making products across apparel, footwear, and accessories that are built to stand the test of time, and we want to continue to do so. But we're clearly faced, as every other player in the industry, with a big challenge here. And we come to this table with our full will to listen and learn. We don't think that the industry has done enough as yet to tackle climate challenge. And what we're going to discuss today is what we can do alternatively. What we can do alternative to change the agenda and tackle the real challenge that this industry is faced with.
Hi, I'm Laura Rojas. I'm the Director of Innovation at Ninjas in Pyjamas. Funny name, huh? Well, Ninjas in Pyjamas is an esports organization. Think of it as if it was AC Milan, but instead of playing football, we play video games. We have over 5 million fans all around the world, ranges in ages from 13 years of age till 45, 50 years old people that just are interested in video games at a competitive level. Ninjas in Pyjamas, by default, works with sustainability, given that, well, we're an industry that is based on web. But we also, just like any sports team, we have team apparel. And from the beginning, I always thought, why don't we do it in a different way? Why don't we start from the beginning differently? So that's basically what I do.
Thank you. And as you can see, our panel is made up from different parts of the industry, so it's going to be a very interesting conversation. So let's start with the first question. There's a lot of importance that's being put on different voices and different ways that we can tackle climate change. How are you part of the conversation when it comes to being part of the solution? Fredrik, I'd like to start with you because I know the Fashion Innovation Centre is all about being a switchboard and kind of connecting industries so we can kind of find a solution together. I would love for you to take that question.
Yeah, well, what we are trying to do is basically, like I said before, we're trying to be a hub for innovation. And basically we're looking out there, so for example, right now we're targeting the overproduction. I mean, if we have 30 to 40% overproduction, which is quite extreme, in the tech industry, 1% overproduction is considered extreme. So 30 to 40% is just horrible. So what we start to do then is that we look for partners, like are there any solutions out there? Maybe for other industries, but that we can adopt for the fashion industry. So right now we're working with a big, huge company called Flex. They're a hardware manufacturers, one of the biggest hardware manufacturers in the world, and trying to see what we can do with their services. And it looks like their services when it comes to logistics, for example, and the logistics handling, is very effective to reduce the overproduction due to the data. There is a lack of data in the fashion industry in general, and traceability. So if we can use other solutions, and then we use solutions providers, we're working with Ernst & Young, for example, to find the solution providers and also the integrators, who can integrate this for big companies, such as FILA, for example. So this is a short version of what we're doing, trying to find the solution providers, trying to find the integrators, and give them an actual idea on how to move forward. Like how can you change this, and how will it happen?
Yeah, building on what Fredrik has said, there's a party going on. Someone is having fun. There's clearly a challenge, not just for FILA, but for the entire fashion industry. Lisa mentioned this is the second most polluting industry worldwide. There's two main factors there. One is the use of plastics and other non-biodegradable materials. The other challenge is supply chain and especially stock excess. The way the supply chain for the entire industry was built dates back to, let's say, about 30 years ago. It's not something that can be disrupted or completely flipped overnight. But there are ways for us as brands, and we all have to play a part in there, to control bits of the supply chain. Adding a digital layer to our products, whether it's a pair of shoes or a t-shirt, is the solution that we are envisioning to ensure we can keep track of the entire life cycle of products. The way this is taking shape through partnerships, we hope can be an interesting outcome for also other brands. We're not here to propose a solution that is unique to us, to FILA. We're more looking into something as like an open platform type of solution, and in the hope that other brands jump into this, because we believe that it can only happen if we manage to take a change into the system. If a systemic change does not happen, our impact on GHG emissions will still be negligible, which is the case with current existing solutions.
Our fans just want to be entertained. The main reason why people follow Ninjas in Pyjamas is because they want to have fun. They want to see different ways in which the way people play, how our players are interacting in the space. So how I do something in this fantastic collaboration is just by adding the digital layer, we add the gamification strategy. How do we make sustainability not just the same old gimmick, but something different? How do we add something that actually creates value over time by creating digital twins, by creating a different type of identity? So that's what I do.
I mean,
I can just add to that a little bit quickly. Sorry. No, but I think it's super interesting to use a player like Ninjas in Pyjamas, which can add a digital value to a garment, on top of a garment, which means that suddenly a t-shirt, for example, that you might wash and throw away quite quickly, but if you have a digital, maybe you visited all of Ninjas in Pyjamas games in the world, and that's stored in the t-shirt, then you suddenly don't want to throw away the t-shirt because you got value outside of the actual t-shirt, which makes you take care of it, and then suddenly you prolong the longevity. Just to explain our relationship here.
I just wanted to add, Laura, you're talking about gaming, and this might be new to some of you, the idea that gaming plays a role in how the fashion industry can be sustainable. So I want to ask you, what role has Ninjas in Pyjamas been playing when it comes to leveraging technology to accelerate innovation within fashion?
Right now, this is stage one. We have around 10 stages to go, but by partnering up with FILA, which is like obviously a big driver into R&D that as a team we do not have, we're starting to add more and more, just like what Fredrik said, the digital layer and the digital twins into digital spaces that I think anyone has yet to do, where you create a physical garment and a digital garment, and then both of them mirror each other. So just like when Fredrik says, you go to an event, an esports tournament, by a gamification strategy within the event, you get badges into your garment, just like you would do in a video game, which will be replicated as well into a digital space. Your garment has a higher value. What you do after, you can sell it, you can, I don't know, share it with your friends, just like Generation Z does with clothing, because they have more of a circular mental way of thinking.
Now I want to talk about the supply chain, fashion supply chain, which is a really big problem. So I think a lot of us focus on like the end product as opposed to the beginning of how we produce our products. So your opinion, I'd love to know, what do you think the short-term and the long-term concerns are for the fashion industry when it comes to supply chain and innovation?
Should I go first? Well, many concerns, obviously. I just read recently research from the US, 14% of the US soil is made of apparel that was disposed. So that's terrible, obviously. Most of it is probably not even used. It's just stock excess. So I think like I said before, it has to happen through a systemic change. There is a lot that brands can do, covering the part that they own of the supply chain. This is an industry that is based on third-party agreements when it comes to manufacturing. And obviously we have, like every other brand does, a code of conduct when it comes to criteria that our suppliers have to fulfill to qualify as a FILA supplier. They cover more the ethics and the societal side of the relationship with them. There is a limit for now to which we can stretch our level of responsibility, but there is definitely a line we can draw at some point when we become owners of the products. At that point we can start tracing and tracking and take full responsibility over the product. Let me also emphasize that there is a role that consumers can play with more virtuous behaviors. And what we see, like you mentioned Generation Z, what we see more and more in terms of consumer behavior, which is making the success of fast fashion, is that there is this willingness to change outfit on a daily basis, which is not necessarily the most virtuous behavior. What we're advocating for here is very simple, low-hanging fruits like clean or wash at low temperatures, cold water, not use tumble dryers, because and try and use more our products. In order to achieve that, if you want to ask that to our consumers, we have to make products that stand the test of time, so the quality must be there. In terms of the bigger systemic change that needs to happen, policymakers should also help, and it's in their role to ensure that also fashion is following circular paths, and a digital layer like a chip embedded into products can greatly help achieving that tracking over the entire product life cycle. And this is what we're working on. This is part of a 5-year strategy, sustainability being one of the 3 core pillars that we have presented up to the financial community and our stakeholders, and that we are sharing with you today. It is so central in the agenda for us going forward that I believe, I mean, a 5-year strategy is not enough. We're here to play in the long game. This brand has been around for over 100 years, so we know what it takes to survive in the long run. There is a lot that needs to change for us to be able to fulfill a promise to become more sustainable.
Yeah, you covered a lot. But what we think from Fashion Innovation Center side is that the big problem, which we do not talk about, is the volumes, the sheer volumes of clothes that we produce. And to tackle the problem, we need to reduce the volumes. And that's the reason why we start with overproduction, because that's a way to lower the volumes. And the second part is we need to change business models. That's the reason why we're working with digital layers, because we also don't believe that you can go out there and realistically think that you can say to the fashion industry, just produce less. That's not realistic if you want change. I mean, you can say it, but it won't happen. You need to find new revenue sources. So you need to cover up for that sales that today is garment. And we already seen in the collaboration we are doing here that we can find those alternative revenue sources. And if we find alternative revenue sources or business models, streaming clothes or rentals, for example, is one of those examples, but also digital experiences on top of clothes could be another alternative revenue source or business model. And that's really where we see a change. And then on top of that, we need, for the garment, we need EU and policymakers to make sure that we have waste handling system in all the cities. So it's a net zero city project, I assume, but it would be, I think. But really we need waste handling, and that can't be on brand level. We need a standardized between brand system for sorting garments and recycling garments. But I think, the order we're taking it is, start with overproduction. That's the easy part to kind of fix. then go and look at the business model itself and try to lower the volumes, then start looking at the materials and the production. So that's the order as we see it.
I mean, I want to stay on the topic of legislation because I do really think that the fashion industry needs it. As most of you know, the fashion industry basically self-regulates itself when it comes to sustainability, and consumers, it takes a while to change how they shop. So do you think it's important that legislation comes into place, or do you think that the fashion industry should still be given space to try and change without laws being put upon them?
Yeah, I will try not to be too evil to the fashion industry, but from our perspective, to be honest, the fashion industry is a little bit like teenagers that happen to set their parents' house on fire at the moment, and you need to help them. So you need to have the fire department coming in, and that's really where we are, I think, today. Is now it's time for the fire department, and I think that EU and legislations could be that fire department. I mean, a simple thing like we talked about overproduction, that's quite easy to legislate against, for example, that you should not be allowed to have that types of overproduction. And when it comes to waste handling, they need support as well. You can't just go out to the fashion industry and say, fix waste handling. Because I think it's a problem that the fashion industry haven't been regarded as an industry for a very long time. And if they're not taken seriously as an industry, then they don't get any support as well from governments, and a little bit today I feel that the conversation is like, oh, they are so bad, the brand. Which is, yes, they have absolutely need to take care of what they do. They have responsibility, definitely. But it's also a governmental, both on EU level, global level, and on national level problem. Because those waste handling systems for textiles should have been in place a long time ago. And that's not a fashion company problem. So I definitely think that the legislations in EU and policy is very important.
What about you, Luca, as a brand? Would you say that putting rules into place will help you structure better, or would you say that that is not the answer right now?
Regulations will come whether we like it or not. We want to be ready for that. We want to be as future-proof as possible. And I think adding this digital layer is, for now, the best vision we could come up with to be as future-proof as possible. Where we take responsibility is the stock excess issue and overall the supply chain issue. And I believe that without regulations, this industry will keep on going with self-regulations, and I don't have any example in history across industries of something that worked for everybody if it was just dictated by the biggest players. Honestly, like I said before, let me say it one more time, a systemic change needs to happen, and policymakers play a role there. What we're trying to do here is to look at an alternative solution, because what has been proposed and what is actually currently ongoing in our industry doesn't seem to have a strong positive impact on the climate challenge. It's all about using alternative materials and not tackling the big issue, which is very much the volume that this industry generates. A digital layer, like a cheap, digitalized product that can be tracked, means that brands can learn about usage of that product. And then forecasting systems can be fine-tuned. I've been in the industry for many years. The forecasting systems are the same as they used to be back in the 90s when offshoring towards Far East started. And there's a lot of assumptions there, but it's not an exact science. The more data we can bring into the conversation of forecasting, the more accurate the forecasting is going to be, and the lower the stock excess.
I want to talk about collaborations, which I know, Fredrik, you really focus a lot on and bring together, and I know Ninjas in Pajamas and FILA have also collaborated. Do you think that collaboration is something that is pushing us forward, or do you think that collaboration is just the Band-Aid that's kind of like not really coming up with solutions, but is just making people feel better because they feel like they're doing something?
the only way to do this is collaborating. It's the only way. Because at Ninjas in Pyjamas, as I said, we don't have the R&D that fashion innovation has. But also we don't have the 100 years that FILA has in producing garments. And what they don't have is our knowledge in gaming and how to make things entertaining and fun and different. If we do the same old things, the same old ways, there's no way of improving or changing.
What do you think? You collaborated recently with Ninjas in Pyjamas. I mean, how's that going in terms of, I mean, is it a learning process for you right now? I mean, is it a kind of the collaboration? Can you kind of tell us a little bit about it?
It's a huge learning process. There are things, there are things that by working with these two partners, we have learned as a company that there would be no ways for us to build that knowledge in-house because we don't have that background, okay? We don't have that same connection with a consumer group that they know directly firsthand. We don't have the experience of Fashion Innovation Center in-house in terms of the merging of fashion and technology. And this has been an accelerator for us, which we value a lot, obviously.
And to you, Fredrik, I know everyone is really in the learning phase right now, trying to figure out how we can come up with good solutions. What do you think the next phase should be after learning?
As much standardized systems as possible, because we need building blocks. The fashion industry haven't, and now I'm a little bit cruel to the fashion industry, but it's true, they haven't put a lot of money into R&D. A lot of company doesn't even know what R&D means. It means research and development, for those who don't know. But they haven't spent much money into research and development. And they won't, and they're not fit to do it. They don't have the budgets. It takes a while to build up an R&D department in a company, and if you don't have it, they will be too slow. So these collaborations are super important for us to be able to build standardized building block that can work across the industry. Like I talked about, very simple, boring system, back-end system to make more efficient logistics systems and forecasting, waste handling systems, repair systems, etc. And those needs to be developed across brands, and I need standardized as well.
I mean, that same spirit is embedded in the idea of the open platform. Like Fredrik said, the ambition here is to be part of something. We're not building something for FILA only, because we are very aware that, again, in order to build in-house competencies, it would take probably another 100 years for us, and we don't have time for that. We need partners that want to be part of this, so we are doing all of this, and we are investing in the hope that other brands with different competencies jump on board, including competitors.
But it's also almost impossible. I mean, if we have the waste handling directive going into legislations at some point, each and every brand can't fix a waste handling system all over the world. It needs to be a standardized system. It's quite obvious. And that needs to live on an open platform. I mean, some kind of platform where a waste handling company can say, we are compatible with the platform, and a fashion company can say, our clothes are compatible with the platform, but you don't have to talk to each other. Just like HDMI for your video player and TV or game box. It would be very hard to connect them if there was a proprietary connector for each and every vendor out there.
And to you, Laura, I mean, I think when people think of gaming, they think maybe of like very young kids. Who is your audience? I mean, who do you want to work with in order to move the industry forward?
As I said before, our fan base starts in the ages of 13 and goes to the ages of 45. So we have millennials, Gen Zs, and obviously alphas up and coming. Our fan base is extremely tech savvy. I mean, they build their own computers, they play around with different cards inside of the computers, different components. They're up to date with the biggest and newest technology in regards to peripherals. So when you think about that, this kind of collaboration is the easiest way to build an audience and to build a user base that actually will start consuming tech and fashion together in a different way.
I want to talk about challenges, because it's very easy to talk about all the good things that we're doing and how amazing it is, but what has been some of the challenges that you have faced? For example, you, Fredrik, you're all about bringing brands together. What are the challenges that you faced doing that?
I would say the biggest challenges are political. To make a company, I mean, we're talking about the businesses that's traditionally very conservative, which sounds strange maybe for a fashion industry, but it's a very conservative industry. It's a very slow-moving industry. Haven't changed for a very long time. If I'm a little bit cruel, I would say that their business model is exactly the same as when you started the Industrial Revolution. Basically, produce as many garments as possible, and we invented 4 seasons to be people buy even more clothes, and it's basically the same. Haven't changed anything. So I think the challenge is to get that industry to move. It's more or less about building support and information for the boards at the company. It sounds very boring and very strange, but that's really to make this change happen. We have to be supporting the companies from the inside a lot, to go all the way through the board, to make an internal kind of journey and set up an internal strategy, and that's very much what we work with Luca.
Yeah, absolutely. I see 2 main challenges here. One is changing the narrative from more volume equals more revenues. That's not necessarily true. Putting more value into products may mean less volume and more revenues, or equal revenues, and that's a quite convincing argument to a board member. And it's the entire supply chain setup, the way it is set up today. Like I said, it's been working quite well for brands in terms of revenue making for the last 30 years. If there is no evidence that there is an alternative to this supply chain methodology, then brands most likely will continue the way it is. Now, what we want to show with this project is that there is an alternative, that there is a different way to make product, that there is a different way to consume product, for it to last longer, to be used more times, to have a lower impact on the planet, and still making revenues for the brand. Because let's face it, what every other brand across industries is afraid of is that going cleaner means losing money. That's what it is. The project is aimed exactly at showing that there may be alternative revenue models created by adding technology and adding a digital layer to products.
Laura, would you say that the fashion industry has arrived too late to the party in terms of gaming and using that as another way to, I guess, to make more money, have new business plans?
Oh my God, this one's a hard one, because I think that a lot of the fashion houses and fashion industry players, they're getting into gaming just because it's cool. Think about Balenciaga when they did Fortnite. Think about Balenciaga when they did also Half-Life. I mean, yes, okay, it's cool. You have a digital item that you can buy on a digital platform. How is this changing anything on how you're actually selling? You're only creating more and more desire to buy the same products in the same way. What we're trying to build is, by adding a digital layer, by reducing overproduction, and creating a new stream of revenue through a gamification strategy that will go eventually into a digital space. That's a different story, because you're not changing the actual base of what a fashion house is.
So it's a bit of a misunderstanding, would you say?
I think it's a gimmick. Most of them are trying to turn it into a gimmick without actually creating real value and creating grassroots into the gaming industry.
Couldn't agree more. I think the fashion industry is well known for having a fling with innovation, but never really committing to it. Fredrik, you talk a lot about business models. What kind of business models do you think the fashion industry needs to adopt in order to move forward?
It's kind of mathematic in a way, actually. If you look at between 2000 and 2015, all the numbers that I'm saying, there is very little data in the fashion industry, so take them with a grain of salt. But a very common number is that we're talking about that we doubled the amount of clothes between 2000 and 2015. To do the same thing between 2015 and 2030 is more or less impossible, even if you don't care about the environment, because we don't have enough resources, unless we, cut down food production. So it's a mathematical thing. We need to switch business model, because even if we don't care about the environment, it's an impossible business model to uphold. We come to a level where it's impossible. And when we're talking about business model, we have a couple of, if you look at people today, what they want access, not ownership. And also the world is moving far too fast for the fashion industry. The fashion industry can't react to trend, which is a paradox. It's an industry based on trend and it can't react to trend. There is Twitter and YouTube and all of these strange new things that the fashion industry haven't really kind of understood yet, that there are those platforms. And going in and create the season and the way that works today with a 3-year cycle, it's far too slow. So it needs to, we have micro-production, we need to move production closer, we need to do on-demand production, we also need rental systems, access to look, but not just from an environmental perspective. It's actually needed because of the core values of the fashion industry need to change to be relevant in a new world, which they haven't adopted to. That's I can continue forever talking about business model and what the fashion industry should change.
I want to talk about manufacturing. Manufacturers and retailers at the moment generate 13 million tons of textile waste. And about 30% of clothes are never sold. This is a huge number. How do you think that we can help the fashion industry through innovation to kind of change those numbers?
This is one aspect that this project covers. Where we think that the project can help is really tracing and tracking across the entire product life cycle what happens with the product, how many times the product has been worn, how often it's used, where it ends up, because that helps after we have accumulated a reasonable amount of data to build our forecasts, our production forecasts in a much more accurate way. I think we touched a little bit about on that point. Without data, the only alternative is continuing to forecast production the way it's done now, and it's a very there's a lot of interpretation that goes into forecasting. If it was a perfect exercise, then we wouldn't have that stock excess. A lot of random processes are in place. There has been no evolution in the last, I would say, 15 years to that. And knowing more about consumer habits and behaviors is going to help us big time building more accurate forecasting.
See, I think that the fashion industry has access to a lot of data, but they don't do anything with it. Would you agree that, or maybe they don't know what to do with it?
Yes and no. They don't have access to the relevant data. Let's put it that way. So, and that's the problem. You can't track and trace. You don't know where stuff are coming from. You don't even know the chemicals in the dyeing correctly. So there is a big lack of data. You don't even know, for example, a lot of companies that we work with don't even know when they're sending stuff to, let's say they're sending stuff to Canada, stuff are not selling in Canada, but are sold out in Italy, for example. They don't even have that data, so they can send the stuff from Canada to be sold in Italy, for example, which is just base data. So there's a lack of data across the whole industry. So I don't say that they don't have data. They have certain type of data, yes, but they don't have relevant data. There is a lack of relevant data.
I fully agree there. There's some transactional data on the amount of volumes that are sold, but a chip on a garment allows for a much deeper knowledge on the entire journey of the product, which we don't have access to otherwise. I don't know what, yeah, there's data on sales volumes and value, but that's not enough.
I feel like when you look at Zara's business model, I think they use it to create more products that they can sell rather than being more sustainable and be more green. Would you agree with this case? I mean, it seems to me a lot of companies are using technology as a way to sell rather than as a way to reduce the amount of products they have.
No, I don't think so. This will definitely lead. I mean, a chip will come at a cost. This is going to premiumize products, right? So by definition, we're going to alienate a certain part of the consumers' platforms, and this is going to lead to absolutely lower volume being produced. Plus, I mean, I don't know if you want to go more into details about the business models, but if we're looking into rentals, the same product can be used much more often and many more times by more people if we get into a completely different mindset. That mindset can only be actioned if we have a digital identification number that makes a product unique. I don't see this. I mean, this is a huge investment that is made to become more relevant to people that are more conscious about the climate challenge, first and foremost.
Yeah, and also it's all about moving from consumers to users as well, which more or less all other industries have done, but having a user relationship instead of a consumer relationship, which also builds value in the data you get. So the fashion industry being such a big industry, there's so many alternative revenue streams which they're not using today. It's so focused on just selling the garments piece by piece right today, which is the worst part of everything that they can make money on. But they have the ability actually and the knowledge to make money on so many other parts if they just changed a little bit. And I mean, going into user relationship. And also, I mean, when we're focusing on existing brands, we also should understand it's a huge industry. It's a $4 trillion industry. That's quite extreme. And I sometimes use numbers. For example, the whole music industry is 21.6 billion, and bridal wear is 80 billion. Just to get, it's a huge industry. But that also makes it interesting for other players. So new players are looking into this. Tech players, game companies that could easily enter the fashion industry because they have users, they have knowledge, they have digital content, and have things that people are asking for. So I think the challenges forward for existing brands is also completely new players that never was in the fashion arena.
I'm speaking on behalf of FILA. This is a public company, so we have also duties in regard to the investors. We're not here in the game of losing money, obviously. So there are ways that are a consequence of this project to engage more directly with consumers. That's very clear to us. But I don't think we're doing anything wrong here when we try to have a more engaging conversation with our users, which probably becomes a better definition for whoever is going to buy the products in the future. What that means is what more engaging and meaningful conversation means for us is also that we want to produce the right quantities. So there's a lot that goes into stock excess also for us. We perform slightly better than the industry average, luckily, but we know that we can do much better, and this is a way to do much better and make consumers probably happier because we give them something that is more relevant for them in terms of, for instance, additional experiences.
Do you think sustainability as a whole is considered not to be a money-making business, hence why fashion hesitates to fully commit to being more sustainable?
I think sustainability, and that's one of the things, when we talk about sustainability most of the time, we talk about it as something negative. Like, oh, we have to be sustainable, and it's almost boring. If you look at fashion, I think sustainability is the biggest business opportunity out there ever. There is so much money to be made in going sustainable. Looking into all of these new sustainability and what I talked about, traceability, and not just for the fashion industry. We're talking about tech companies around because they need databases, they need tracking, tracing, hardware, software, there's so many industries that can benefit from fashion industry going sustainable. So I would say sustainability is a business opportunity. So it's a very positive thing. That's something that we, at least when we talk about it from Fashion Innovation Center side, we're trying to kind of turn around this. This is a opportunity. It's not we have to go sustainable, it will cost you. No, it doesn't cost you. You will make more money if you actually reduce CO2 emission. It's just a bad old business model right now. We need to change it anyway.
Any questions from the audience before we wrap up? Yes, we've got a gentleman. We'll start with this gentleman over there. If you come over towards me, I will give you my mic.
Hello, I'm a scientist working in agriculture and environment, so we were just neighbors, and then I found interesting concepts discussed and stepped in. I'm an innovation and scaling scientist, and my task is try to improve the efficiency of the solutions in low-income countries like in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. I think there are a few things. First of all, we are discussing, I'm also European, discussing the things, but the population of Europe is a very few part of the world, and it will be even less. So the question is that how are we going to make these ideas operationalize and outside of Europe? I see two things coming up. The gamification in Southeast Asia and East Asia is very strong. I see, as you said, really a clear potential for gamification to improve sustainability. But for example, in Africa and Latin America, there's a lot of social redistribution systems. They distribute the clothes. In terms of traceability, I think we need to also look how these social systems redistribute, exchange the clothes or garments. It has been done, it's been there for the thousands of years. We just don't know how to do that. And I think if we trace there as well, there's massive potential for reducing overproduction. Thank you.
Very strong comment, thank you. And this lady.
Do you want to talk about the
I think it was more a statement and a question in a way.
Okay, I am Lisa Kaya. I'm from the Global South, and my question is directed to the gaming industry. My first question is directed to the gaming industry. So I've been on TikTok almost like on a daily, and I've been seeing people copying whatever that is happening on, like whatever games that they're playing, and then they're making videos and trying to like do whatever the games do as well. For example, there were people making videos of the Grand Theft gaming video, and also some people copying what's happening on the Subway Surf game. So I was thinking, I wanted to ask, what's your thought on games that make the players take action rather than learning only about the issue? Do you like program or design your game to seem more realistic to people, or like to be relevant to whatever the crisis is, and to make them take action rather than learning and accumulating more knowledge about about the crisis that is at hand? And my second question is directed to the fashion industry. My second question is directed to the fashion industry. So, how would you explain sustainability? I'm panicking. How would you explain sustainability and upcycling to a 10 or 11-year-old, or people who want knowledge about this matter, or to a community that buys fast clothing because that's what they can afford to maintain their lifestyle, or to also dress at that very moment? Also considering the fact that sustainable clothing can be a bit too expensive, how do you make it or plan to make it accessible to people?
Thank you. Laura, would you like to take the first question?
Yeah, I'll take the first question. We're not game developers. We're users as well. We play at a competitive level. I do think, though, that you have a very good point. And there's 2 games that have actually done that. They did one that I was actually played by Gamers Without Borders. It was a competition. It was a very big stream. And they play a game about a person who was a refugee, and the game basically went around telling you the story of what it meant being a refugee. I think it was a collaboration with UNDP. But in regards of sustainability, there is a lot to do in regards of how to make it, like, make sustainable fun. But again, how do you, like, to find that exact balance on how to not making a gimmick, but doing it something that becomes in the back of your mind, something like a second nature. So, very good point. I agree with you 100%.
And Luca, the question she asked about
I have
upcycling.
twins. They are 11 years old, so the way I explain it to them is the track jacket you were wearing today is not dirty enough to be washed, so you can use it once more. Or we don't need another pair of shoes. You can live with what you have. And I don't know if it's enough of an explanation, but that's how I take it personally. Accessibility to, in terms of price, I think the solution we're looking into is going to create a premium in the final price, like retail price, that we are trying to minimize. That's why the partnership is the biggest manufacturer of electronics in order to engineer a product that can and minimizing the cost as much as possible, also minimizing the impact that this is going to have on the final price. Making it accessible to a global scale is something that we're looking into. Like I said, it is partially disruptive for our supply chain, and we're looking into ways to make it happen regardless of the geography, without impacting too much the price level. There is going to be an impact on the price level, but you can elaborate a little bit on overall the sustainability, which is probably a much bigger conversation, sustainability in poor countries, let's say.
No, I mean, in general, I think that you talked about prices, and the lowest prices need to be raised because they are too cheap today. It's a problem. You can't sell clothes at that price. But then I think we talked about new business models, subscription services, etc. We can see with music, for example, it actually worked that music was a little bit more democratized by the fact that you have streaming platforms and access. So, and I can see the same thing happening with clothes, where you actually give access to clothes in a completely different way. So that money, because money is a problem when it comes to fashion.
Yes. We are actually running out of time. I've only got 2 minutes, but I urge you to come and speak to the panelists, have a conversation with them, ask them your questions, but also to answer your question as well. With sustainability, buying clothes that are more sustainable is not the only solution. I always feel like there's many other ways that people can be sustainable, especially young people. So I feel that they feel the pressure to buy sustainable brands. And you can be sustainable by sewing your own clothes, making your own clothes, buying secondhand. There's various ways that people can do that. So if you guys want to continue to talk to Fredrik, to Luca, and to Laura, please feel free to do so and have that conversation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, and to keep you entertained and in the room. So I wouldn't do like my job as a policy director well if I just talk about like what is sustainability, especially in pricing. There are from governance a lot of tools what you can do. Like for instance, why are sustainable products more expensive than non-sustainable products? It's a substitution and a taxation issue. You should be able to get tax rebates when you repair items. That is all stuff every government can do, right? So, you just have to tell it over and over again. Don't give them an excuse not to do anything. We're going to continue the conversation also because this is about commitment. One of the things also is like what will happen later on here is that we have the Green Web Foundation here. This is Chris, hello. You will see him on a panel after this panel now. But you will see Laura again, because Ninjas in Pyjamas will today sign the Sustainable Web Manifesto. So have a look, go to the Sustainable Web Manifesto. It's about to program and design a more sustainable, smarter designed web, because there's an energy tracking on digital as well. If the digital economy would be a country, it would be the 7th most polluting country in the world. So also, yet again, Ninjas in Pyjamas is, leading the way and will sign an agreement in a digital form. Thank you very much, Chris. Lara, we will see you outside later on. One more round of applause for the brave first generation. Thank you very much. And of course, we are not going to finish here, because there are a lot of other lighthouse projects out there who are trying to do the right thing, but especially not only inside the fashion industry, in collaboration with technology. So I'm really happy that we have another case study for you via video, saving the travel by flights. So they just decided to give us a video. So we at Climate-KIC very happily support a digital brand called Responsible, and they teamed up with Christopher Rayburn, not only in terms of recycling, upcycling clothes, but also like embracing digital change. And without any further ado, we are now playing the video message. There's hope.
Hi, my name is Mark Dowds. I'm the founder and CEO of a technology company called Responsible, based in Belfast, Northern Ireland. We exist to fight for circularity, specifically in the fashion industry.
Hi, my name is Christopher Rayburn. I'm the founder of Rayburn Design. We're based here in Hackney in East London. Been running the company since 2009. We started with a really clear mission statement: how to change the world through responsible design. And our whole business is about remaking amazing things like parachutes, silk maps, life rafts, you name it, reducing our impact on the environment or fully recycling clothing.
So Responsible, as I mentioned, is a technology company, and we're focused on not just re-commerce and resale, but the regeneration of items. And we work with brands like Rayburn to help bring those products that have been previously made into, basically, and give them a second life, make sure that they're kept in circulation for a lot longer. Christopher, thanks for hosting us here today. Yeah, in this beautiful studio where things are remade. Tell us a little bit about the remade aspect of things in the brand.
Yeah, sure. So behind us is our atelier. We're here in East London. This used to be the beating heart of a lot of British manufacturing, clothing manufacturing here in London. And for us, it's really important within Rayburn that we actually physically make things ourselves. And the products that are actually made here in the studio in East London, they've actually been remade from original items. And that can be anything from beautiful parachutes through to 1950s silk maps, through to air brakes, through to life rafts. All of this cool stuff that already exists, we really believe you can take that, harvest it, deconstruct it, and then remake it into useful, contemporary and wearable pieces. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for me now, because I started Rayburn back in 2009. My view has always been that as a designer, you have a responsibility to design in the best way that you can. And what that really means is choosing the best materials, thinking upstream about the choices you're making a product that's going to last for a long time, and then importantly considering, well, what happens at the point of sale? If someone purchases something from Rayburn, step one, we're very grateful, but then also that's where the journey begins. And so we're already now in a position that, and when you and I spoke a year ago, we're already in a position, because our company's 13 years old, that we've got customers, really loyal, brilliant customers, that have now come back to us to say, you know what, I love what you're doing, but actually I've got 5 or 6 or 7 of your jackets from the last 13 years, and that's kind of normal maybe. So what happens next, and how could we look at thinking about, again, a responsible way to bring some of those jackets back and still empower that customer with their own choice of what happens next? I mean, that was really my interest when we started to talk.
and for us to meet you and already working in the full aspect of circularity, bringing things back to life, bringing things that were previously made as something else and giving them a whole new journey, engaging them from a technology perspective to really enable your customers to trade things in or for enable you to buy them back and to control those products in the secondary market. I mean, I think that's really where we began to really close the loop on that.
That's the brilliant thing about the world we live in today, that if you can bring together the best of technology and the best of tradition, i.e. you can bring something back, you can have it repaired, which is quite an analog process, but then that's done in a digital world as well. I think that's where things get really exciting.
Yeah, one of the things that's been obviously important to you is you've been building a brand that stands for something important. And then when you get to secondary markets, often brands lose control of where they're sold on platforms, and there's no appreciation of what's been put into that. So in starting to work together, us learning how you work and what you value in your brand, have you seen a little bit of an extension or halo from that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You're right to highlight that it's an interesting thing, even as a designer, as a brand. You know, over the years now, we've created tens of thousands of pieces, and each one of those things we put a lot of dedication into making, and again, the choices that have gone into those materials, hardware, and importantly, the design itself. At every stage, you're trying to do the best thing you possibly can. And then importantly, that product's being sold because it's appealed to someone. And then what happens after that is actually kind of quite a fragmented and detached experience as a designer. So the exciting thing now is to actually see items coming back to responsible that might have been out in the world for 6-7 years, and to almost have imagined or part seen that journey, and then importantly had the opportunity to see those things represented to the world in a really elevated way. And I think what you guys have been doing well is very much around the cleaning processes, repairs if it's needed, and then the photography and everything else that at each stage again has put that same dedication that we put in all those years ago back into that piece to get it back to the best possible position it could be.
So the technology that we've been building and providing for brands like Rayburn enables the brand to offer their customers the ability to trade something in against something of the next season. So Christopher, tell us what's the experience like when someone arrives on your website or when someone wants to trade something in?
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkably simple. They can see straight away when looking at a product what the value of that product might be at end of life. So that's really important already to know, okay, cool, well if I'm buying this hoodie at 125 or whatever it may be, even once I've worn it, well here's what it's going to be worth at the end of that journey. And then you also know, well, I've already maybe got one of those hoodies, or it's already that opportunity to potentially trade that item in and get that value off the new piece as well. So the great thing, it's completely transparent. I think it's very clear, whether that be if you're looking online, see through the app. It's a really important part of this conversation. The interaction has to be simple, has to be understandable, and people have to get it. You know, our job is actually to make, again, I think hopefully very good creative decisions for customers, right? Everything that we can do to make their lives easier and to make positive choices, that's good news.
I think people have closets stuffed full of stuff, and then we continue as brands to manufacture more and more every year, where if we can unlock more of what's in the closet, similar to the automotive market and really beginning to expand, you realize that the secondary market could be significantly even bigger than the primary.
And importantly, as we continue to have this, you know, let's face it now, a real issue with dwindling resources, there's going to be even more value in those original pieces that actually were made with the most premium materials and everything else. You know? Long term, we're going to be mining landfills to extract synthetics, right? So you then think, wow, okay, what's that going to be doing with the clothing market if there's already all of these things that already exist, right? You know, this is quite an abstract thought, but it will happen. So the more we can do now to keep things in circulation and do things in a meaningful way, it's only going to help. If we as an industry could basically keep things in pillars, it would really help.
I mean, it's frightening the amount of things that are being either stashed in the closet or thrown away and discarded.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to a point of disgust.
Yeah, and to your point, worse still, never even make it to a customer. They're being overproduced to begin with, right? So you're already talking about a decent section. And it's really chastening, in a world that's now got a lot of depleted natural resources, that we're still pumping out all of this stuff. And for me, it's important to acknowledge that, a lot of folks need affordable clothing. So there's no qualms with that, particularly cost of living crisis and the reality of the world that we live in. But for me, this is really a conversation about making sure that garments are truly worn and worn for a sustained period of time. And those are some of the really easy wins that we could do to begin with. What can you do to keep things in circulation before always thinking you need something new, and worst of all, not even using anything at all.
The main challenge of what we're trying to bring to the brands is that, you're manufacturing, take responsibility for those things that you're making, and make it easy for your customers to bring those things back. Give them an incentive, give them a financial incentive to trade it in, but obviously to keep it in rotation, because if that's happening, then eventually our hope is that we manufacture less, where brands can still benefit financially from those second life items.
A, it makes perfect sense, it's common sense, and then B, there's another element to this, that absolutely government legislation will be going this way in the future anyway. So any brands looking to future-proof themselves towards those changes in legislation should be thinking about these things anyway. We will be at a point where it doesn't matter where you purchase a product from any brand, you'll be able to know, okay, where that was made, the materials, of course, that have gone into it, and then importantly, what happens next. So I think what you guys are doing at Responsible is actually, it's a pathfinder, but then it's also a framework for the future.
The one piece I'd love to be calling out is that go into your closet, consider what's there, consider what you really need, and get those things out and get them in rotation. It's not throw them away, we don't want to see anything in landfill, but find the right solution to bring them back. If you're working with the brands that we'll work with, they'll be able to take those back, and you'll be able to have a financial benefit from that as well. Our handles on the screen, we'd love to be hearing from you. We'd love to learn from you if you've got anything else that you'd like to share back to us and feedback. But we've open channels.
To begin with, buy well, considered choices, responsible choices, and then absolutely do everything you can to keep that garment being worn, repaired if it needs to be, given on, and importantly rotated. And I think it's really just going to be about putting the best foot forward, right? And hopefully enjoying it as well. Clothing should be fun, fashion should be fun, and we do some pretty good positive steps together, we're going to be able to make a good difference.
And we are back. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark from Responsible and Christopher, because Dave made that video like almost overnight. And I got it like 5 minutes before I had to jump on the airport to the flight. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So, of course, no rest for the wicked. We have to continue. The big question of the big urgency, as we heard just before, is about we don't have time. We are running out of time. We are slow, too slow. We should be faster. So that's why we wanted to address is what do we need? We need a catalyst.